Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, March 4th, 2019. We hope everyone had a great weekend, and let's get it started with some space weather news. First, I want to take us over to thegrandssolarminimum.com, and I can't express how excited I am about every week. It seems like we have new features that develop on this webpage, and once again, thanks to Mari, who has built this website from the ground up. She does everything, folks. But anyway, so she put in a feature that was actually a suggestion from a subscriber of ours about scheduling the shows and making them available on this calendar. And when you want to tune in, you just simply click on the date of the show, and then it will bring you to the link of the show, and voila, look at that. Here we go. So thanks again to Mari for this new feature that we have now on our website at thegrandssolarminimum.com. And also, I want to talk about too, before we get into the news, it's been a while since we've talked. We have a news section being built right now as we speak, the GSM glossary. And what we're trying to do with this website is not only give you the tools to observe our stars well and space weather, but to understand everything. We are now building a foundation, a dictionary of what we are about, what we are studying, and the research that we are doing here. And again, I just want to shout out, spread the love to Mari for putting in all this time and putting in these articles, finding these very descriptive pieces on sunspots, thanks to, by the way, TSM Solar Observations, formerly known as Starman. But he also has contributed to this as well on a write-up that he did for us. What are they? Sunspots, what are they? Titled there. I'm hovering up. Anyway, back to on topic. Everybody should check these out. These GSM glossary. Mari is putting this here to help people because we get a lot of questions, guys, about what certain abbreviations stand for, and a lot of the times, and I feel bad about this. You know, Mari and I do have full-time obligations as well, and I have a career as well outside of this. So we don't always have the time we actually would like to have to answer everyone's questions. We do from time to time, but this is going to be a better way to help communicate everything that we are talking about, everything that is going to be covered when we talk about a grand solar minimum, climate, and everything in between, crop loss, disease, famine. It's all going to be here, and I really just wanted to take some time before we started our broadcast tonight and give Mari some love for the hard work that she's putting into this website here, the Grand Solar Minimum. You know, thankfully we have the YouTube channel, but you never know, as crazy as things have been, about how long the future of channels like ours will be, just depending on if we see a change of government administrations and an affiliation, I guess we should say. So let's go ahead and get over to our show for the night. Those of you just joining us, welcome. And dookie here. Just trying to click on it here. What am I doing wrong, Mari? Here we go. I got it. All right. So we have the video here embedded. You guys can follow along, push play, and follow the format that we put together here. The solar wind speed for tonight is sitting right around 403.8 kilometers per second with a density of around 2. And once again, guys, no sunspots for today, and that will now put us at 47 days without sunspots in 2019. All right, taking a look at our blank sun, and also we'll take a look at the space weather section here on the Grand Solar Minimum. KP indices not going anywhere above 3 in the past 48 hours. And let's take a look at the SDO in motion, shall we? Appears to be our SDO angstrom here. 193 is frozen. Let's go ahead and push play, see if we can get that going for us here. Had problems with this earlier. We see an active region in the southern part of our star below the equatorial region is still not named as a sunspot. So again, officially looking at the sun, we do not have any sunspots to report on at this point. And maybe our next chance will be this active region that's all the way back on the other side of our star. So again, interesting enough, I was talking to a subscriber not too long ago about predictions of sunspots and how many days we're going to go without. And he made a really, I thought was a very educated estimate guess of 35 days straight without sunspots. And right now we are now day 32 heading into 33. Now I believe I'd said something, you know, thinking back now it may sound a little ridiculous, but I think I said somewhere between 45 or 48 days without a sunspot before we see one. And right now, if this is anything to look at here on the other side, that could be the possibility of our next sunspot, as we do have a couple of little bright regions. But again, we had a very bright active region coming over the eastern limb a couple days ago, and it really didn't form into anything at all. All right, let's take a look at our TSI readings for, let's see, this would be February 23rd here, 2019. TSI reading of 1360.7184. So we are now witnessing this TSI fluctuation, the increase, after a sharp decline and a quick incline as well. As you guys look back here, previous times that we've seen these dips in TSI, they generally don't fall that far deep and recover as quickly as this one did as well. So we will continue to monitor that as we carry on. We are already in month number 3 of 2019, folks. Hard to believe. All right, let's take a look at some headlines around the world. Let's go to watchers.news. Rio, Colorado hit by frost at the height of the summer. That's right. The unusual event was recorded on February 26 when a local weather station registered below freezing temperatures that reached 30 degrees in parts of the productive area and 28.4 degrees in other areas. The low temperatures also surprised some localities south of La Pampa, where temperatures were 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The frost lasted for 4 hours, causing direct damage to pumpkins, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, melons, watermelons, and other vegetable crops to a lesser extent. Agronomicus Pillarimians said the frost at this time is unusual. No one expected it, and so producers were not prepared against it. Think about that. Let that sink in. No one expected this, and usually when you hear a hint of there's a possibility of a frost, most farmers would take the time to prep, all hands on deck, covering everything on their crops. So that's important, that little statement there. And he said in this sector we expect the first frost at the end of March, early April, but not at this time. Hours before the phenomenon, a producer contacted us to let us know they expected to have good squash harvest, but the picture changed the next day when he saw that much of his production had turned black because of the cold. That means he'll have an important loss, she added. So again, this was not expected. And what's the significance of this temperature drop and what a grand solar minimum effect would have? And it's this to me is a preview of those violent temperature swings unannounced. I know we experienced it here in the Northeast, where we were not forecasted to hit lower than 4 degrees above 0 Fahrenheit. And we woke up the next morning to negative 15 degrees below 0 at 8 a.m. Not forecasted anywhere on any of our weather apps. Weather.com, AccuWeather, Weather Nation. Nobody predicted even 0. And we were negative 15 when we woke up at 8. And the significance of an unfortunate event like this, it lasted for 4 hours. It was long enough to do some damage. And this is where the problem with the lie that's being told that man-made emissions are causing climate change. And in this situation, we're looking at cold conditions in summer. All right? We're not talking about some weird warm winter day that do happen from time to time. We're talking about areas that got to 25 degrees Fahrenheit in the height of their summer. Even if their average high temperature is 70 degrees or 71 degrees, that's still quite a drop for that region. And like I said, these farmers know what they're doing. If there was any kind of a warning out there that would have stated, hey, we might have some problems tonight, maybe you want to take precautions and cover your crops. I'm sure there's got to be like a 10 to 15 degrees like of margin where it's like you should watch it. So to think that it's possible these temperatures drop 15, 20 degrees lower than what they thought to be in the first place would be interesting. I'll have to do some research on that, but we'll have the link on our website at thegrandsolarminimum.com. Go ahead and click on the title. That'll take you right to the article at watchers.news. Extreme damage here, guys. At least 23 fatalities and a series of tornadoes that hit Alabama and Georgia. We were not too long ago talking about how last year we didn't see any EF4 tornadoes and did not have to lose any more than 10 human lives last year during the severe weather season. And this year it gets kicked off a little early. It's not unusual to see tornadic weather in the south in the first part of March. And so today's 23 death toll right now, and that was as of March 3rd. But a series of destructive tornadoes ripped through Alabama and Georgia on Sunday, March 3rd, killing at least 23 people in Alabama Lee County. Unfortunately, the death toll is expected to rise. This is the deadliest Alabama tornado since 2011, when more than 200 people were killed in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham tornado. The deadliest U.S. tornado since May of 20th of 2013, Newcastle, Oklahoma. More tornado during the entire 2018. The United States, it only killed 10 people, like I just mentioned here. So, what could be the cause of the early start to spring-like severe weather outbreaks? And it could be that we have experienced a pretty cold winter, and now we're getting this rush of warmer air as El Nino has strengthened to where it needs to be to exist at this point. But we'll keep our eyes on that as well. Also, you know, some are saying the South could be warmer this summer anyway. So this could be another factor here. We have a lot of tropical moisture that is continuing to ravage that area. You know, California, you've had the atmospheric rivers more than once, and now we're seeing some pretty intense returns for moisture, and I do believe it might have something to do with possibility of warmer temperatures trying to be the norm in the South. So, but we'll talk more about that later in the broadcast here. But also on watchers.news, we had another tornado to talk about as well. Same day. This is Talbotton, Georgia, and this hit on the 3rd as well. It says 15 structures were destroyed and injuring at least 6 people. Another tornado hit Cario, causing heavy damage just south of downtown. The tornadoes were part of a series of destructive tornadoes across the South on March 3rd, in which 23 people lost their lives. I'm going to go back to the one where 23 people lost their lives. Some are saying at least an EF3. I have seen reports of the damage here experienced is EF4 possibility. EF3 at least. I'd say this is going to make a strong case of possibly seeing an EF4 rating on this tornado as well. More pictures here from watchers.news, collection of Twitter. And also, I believe, Mari, you've shared a few things today, actually. about these storms down south, but just big start already to the 2019 storm season, severe weather season. Here's the radar when the tornadoes were indicated on radar. Tallahassee here. Again, we'll leave the link here in the description on our website. There's the map of the tornado reports. There was 39 tornado reports yesterday, 72 high wind reports, 16 hail reports, a total of 127 reports, according to NOAA. They could have either decreased or increased those numbers. Who knows? But point being here, I didn't see this anywhere, or as much as I probably should have as far as mainstream coverage. So a pretty significant day on an early day here in March. And as we get further into the show, we'll talk about this cold air that's coming and what the GFS is indicating. And again, the GFS hasn't been too terribly wrong this year. It may be the weaker when it comes to precipitation, but temperature-wise, I think the GFS has fared pretty decent this year. Let's take a look at other headlines that we are going to cover tonight. Massive landslide near Orville Dam in India. And there's another dam we're going to talk about here in just a second. Give me a sec. So a massive landslide took place near Orville Dam in India, controlled Kashmir on March 2nd, 2019, and was captured on camera. The slide had been associated with a period of heavy rainfall across the region, which has led to substantial damage, landslides, expert Dave Peltley said. There must be a strong suspicion here that this rock slope failure has been caused by cutting of the slope for the road. In other words, they're doing infrastructure construction out here. As such, it is yet another example of inadequate highway engineering causing loss of infrastructure and serious permanent environmental damage. He claims it is completely unnecessary. Let's take a look at some of this footage we have here. And unnecessary as for the cleanup. They're trying to do construction here, and now we just have more work to do. But yeah, poorly engineered. Yeah, maybe these roads should be a little bit further away from these areas vulnerable to landslides. Again, the link will be at thegrandsolarminimum.com. Taking a look here, some earthquake news to talk about. Now we're hearing reports of a 4.5 magnitude earthquake centered about 59 miles southwest of Grand Junction, Colorado, was felt in communities across southeastern Utah early Monday. The quake at 10:22 was followed by a 2.0 magnitude 20 minutes later. There are no reports of damage, but residents in Blanding, LaSalle, and Mexican Hat felt the tremor. 5.3 magnitude earthquake was the original reporting that I had saw from the USGS. According to seismologist James Peckman, the University of Utah Seismological Stations, the quake occurred in an area that experienced multiple induced earthquakes caused by water well injections. It's the largest of 332 earthquakes that the USSS has recorded since February 17th. So there has been an uptick in earthquake activity, as this man is pointing out here. And I grabbed this picture because that's what this gentleman is researching right now, is the recent uptick in the seismic activity that was out there. Now, another thing I found interesting was that we also had another rare earthquake in Alberta. So for anybody that wants to say that it was just a natural occurrence, okay, that's fine due to well injections, but are you saying that this one possibly was related? Because this was reported right around the same time. Okay, this was about 4 hours before the earthquake in Colorado occurred. But it says here, Natural Resources of Canada says there's been a 4.6 earthquake in central Alberta. The federal department's website says the quake occurred around 5:55 a.m. local time Monday and was felt lightly in Red Deer and in the town of Sylvan Lake and to the west. It says the quake was about a kilometer beneath the surface. There were no immediate reports of damage, but Joan Goddard, a communications officer of Sylvan Lake, says the power went out for most of the town. The utility company Fortis was expected to restore full power by mid-morning. The USGS website says the earthquake, similar to the one that struck Alberta, had sensation like a heavy truck striking a building that can rattle windows and may break some dishes or windows. So that was the effect of that earthquake, right about the same as the 5.3 in Colorado, which later occurred. And I do believe, Mari, was it you that told me that Old Faithful happened to go off?
The geyser went off today before the earthquake.
In Utah?
Yeah, well, that earthquake in Colorado, I've read a few tweets saying that it was injection of, like a fracking thing. I'm not aware of that area, but, I mean, who knows? We've had some weird earthquake locations in the States the past week.
Yep.
Virginia had like a 2.0 or a 3, I'd say 2.3 or something. It was sort of interesting because you don't normally see earthquakes in that area. But I was reading that if something goes off in Colorado, it has in the past gone off in Virginia as well. So I'm not sure what the fault lines look like there, but sort of interesting.
Well, and I brought this up. It was interesting that the 5.3 in Colorado, but then I was also notified today by Rachel and Carlton, our fun guys in Canada.
He's here in the chat.
Well, they were the ones that alerted me about the earthquake in Canada, and that's when I had sent you a message earlier to say, hey, you're saying that we had a geyser go off before the earthquake in Colorado, and we had one early in the morning in Alberta. Just some rare occurrences. That's, something to not panic over, but definitely odd that we had a few synchronicities, if you will call it that, I guess. All right, so let's move on here. We had the Alberta earthquake, and I want to talk quickly about the cold air. And I kind of reviewed the GFS forecasting for later here in March, and I kind of still feel like there might be one more punch left to the winter, but I think winter is trying to wind it down. I do believe some spring weather could be in our near future, but right now old man winter might have a punch or two left in him, and it's going to start off with this cold air. It says here at a glance, March is kicking off with major cold outbreak centered in the plains, Midwest, and the northern Rockies. The east won't be nearly as cold, but it will also be chilly. March is beginning with a major cold outbreak here in March, just like it did through the end of February as well. An all-time March record low, the entire state of Montana may have been set at Elk Park Monday morning when the temperature fell to minus 46 degrees. This comes after two cities in Montana set at all-time record lows for the month of March, Sunday morning at minus 31, and Livingston was at negative 27 degrees. Some pretty big records there, guys. Set back in 1897 and 1906. Chicago fell below zero Monday morning, something that has happened only 8 other March days on record at the airport, last occurring on March 3rd of 2014. That was the last time that we had the major polar vortex outbreak. I remember that very well. It was also the coldest March morning there since March 4th of 2002. North Platte, Nebraska set an all-time March record low of minus 25 degrees early Monday. In addition, daily record lows for March 4th were set in Duluth, Minnesota at minus 19 degrees, and Indianapolis 2 degrees at time. Daily low records in March were also set Sunday morning. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, minus 17. Billings, Montana, negative 19. Rochester, Minnesota, negative 17. That was a tie. And St. Paul, Minneapolis, minus 13 was also a tie. The cold won't lose its grip into the midweek. Low temperature in the plains and the upper Midwest will likely remain below average, with morning readings in the single digits and below zero. We have our temperature map here, forecasted highs, especially for the northern plains. You guys will see the majority of this cold, the worst of it too. Colder air reaches south and east in a more muted form through Tuesday. Low temperatures Tuesday and Wednesday are expected to be 10 to 20 degrees colder than average across most of the south and the east. Lows will drop into the single digits in the interior northeast, with teens for the northeast coast. From North Washington, D.C. to Boston, lows will be in the 20s, will be widespread in the south, by the way. So this will be a deep trough here of cold air getting into the south as well. By midweek, the colder temperatures will even reach Florida, which hasn't seen much in the way of cold temperatures recently, as average temperatures for many locations in Florida for February were 4 to 9 degrees above average. That's some good spring training baseball weather right there for you. Arizona, not so much. Similar to late January's cold outbreak, biting winds are making the cold dangerous. Persistently northerly westerly winds could produce wind chills in the minus teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s. Minus 40s, that is, folks, in the plains and the Midwest early this week. And here we see the wind chill alerts already. Parts of Kansas, near Norton, Kansas, Almena, North Platte, Nebraska. Half of Nebraska is responsible now for wind chill alerts, and most of Montana, the northeast corner, also will experience. So here's a map showing what's happening. Why is it so cold? This latest cold outbreak is due to a jet stream pattern in the Arctic that's blocked. Namely, a nose of high pressure aloft the Gulf of Alaska to the Canadian Arctic is forcing bitterly cold air southward into the U.S. This Arctic block has been responsible for abnormally mild weather in parts of Alaska, including record warmth at America's northmost city, Yukatakavik, formerly known as Barrow. We'll leave the link in the description if you guys want to check this out for yourself. Taking a look at low temperatures in Dallas, 22 on Tuesday. 25 in Atlanta on Tuesday. New York City, 20 degrees. Boston, 19 degrees. Just bone-chilling cold for New York City and Boston. Orlando, Tuesday and Wednesday, that's brutal. Think about it, some folks don't even have furnaces in their homes. Some of these houses are just built with AC units. 43, 41 degrees, that's going to be a little chilly. Alright, moving right along here. Alright, we were talking about a dam in India. Lake Orville, I wanted to show you guys this. First of all, thank you, What's Up With That, for this great article showing us the new technology that we have to monitor the dam. But the best part about it, look at how beautiful that dam is. That spillway. I know a lot of people, one in particular person, who said that this dam was going to give way in 10 days after the event had happened, when the Orville Dam was appearing to collapse. Ye had little faith in our Army Corps engineers, apparently, because now we are looking at a beautiful spillway that looks better than ever and should hold to such possibility of events. And these people know that put this together, and they know they're going to see another release like that at some point. But I wanted to bring this to our attention as well, because we haven't talked about Orville in a while, and I just was excited to show you a picture of what it actually looks like now that the work has been completed and is ready for action. But we're talking about this because after the winter storms, the water level stands just 2 feet below the new spillway gates. Will it work? Again, it's a little nerve-wracking. The hopes are that they did it right. They did it right this time. It's 2.7 feet away from actually the spillway gates and rising 2 to 3 feet daily At that rate, it will only be less than a day before the new billion-dollar spillway could be used/tested. DWR says there is an 813.6 foot threshold use, and that is indicated by orange line in the graph shown above. Ah, there we go, the old orange line. Again, it'll be interesting to follow here in the next several days. California has seen its share of rainfall. It does not appear to let up at any time soon. All right, so we got a little video, a little movie clip here, a little movie time. Everyone gather around. But tonight, I want to show you this quick little 3.5-minute video. This gentleman here who is explaining why renewables are not the answer. And it's not just about climate change. It's about the reality of the lack of reliability that we have with solar and wind. So, in other words, there's two main factors here, and I'll go ahead and play it and let you guys watch for yourself. How about I get some sound?
Democratic Party. Young pioneer Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says we need to ground our planes, ditch our cars, stop having kids for the sake of the planet. We even need to stop eating hamburgers, though Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff was just caught downing one for dinner the other night. But even if we went entirely to wind and solar, as the Green New Deal ordains, would that fix the problems we need to fix? Michael Schellenberger has spent many years looking at this, and he doesn't think so. He's the president of the group Environmental Progress, and he joins us tonight. Michael, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You wrote a piece in Quillette this morning that I thought was really smart and interesting, and I recommend it to everyone watching because of the level of scientific detail in it. But it's about wind and solar and the claim that we could shift the grid to rely on renewables like wind and solar overnight and be okay. And you say that's not possible.
Yeah, and I was one of the founders of sort of the original Green New Deal back in between 2003 and 2007. People don't remember President Obama. We spent about $150 billion on renewables between 2009 and 2015. And we just kept encountering the same kind of problems everywhere that were related both to the essential unreliability of solar and wind. They just depend on when the sun is shining and wind is blowing, which is 10 to 40% of the year.
10 to 40% of the year, the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. Now you tell me that's the first thing that jumps out at me about solar and wind. Now, and this guy does not indicate he has an agenda here. He's not one side or the other. He's just telling us the facts here. This is the truth about solar and wind, and these are serious concerns.
And then also something that people are not as aware of, which is the low energy density of sunlight and wind. And basically what we've been finding is that the lower the energy density of the fuel, in this case the sunlight and wind, the bigger the environmental impact. You just have to use a lot more natural resource, including land, to generate very much electricity.
So it's not very good for the environment, was your point. Then you point to another form of energy that has a checkered reputation, but that you made a very powerful case for, nuclear.
Yeah, I mean, we were in the process of trying to figure out how to deal with things like climate change, or even if you're not as concerned about climate change, how to deal with air pollution.
Yes.
We finally just had a number of friends who said, what about nuclear? And we were like, well, but nuclear is scary, and we had, I had all of the concerns.
Pay attention, folks. This is important right here. Pay attention to what he says here.
That most people have about nuclear. I read up about all the accidents and was shocked, actually, by how few people died in Chernobyl. In the most recent accident in Fukushima, the scientists agree that nobody will die from the radiation that escaped. And that, too, is explained by the energy density. So what we find is that biomass, burning wood, and fossil fuels kill about 7 million people a year from smoke. And so that smoke is just a function of all of that waste product being in the air, people breathing it. With nuclear, even in the worst accident, only a tiny amount of material escapes. And so the energy density of the fuel also determines just how much air pollution there's going to be.
So the people who wrote the Green New Deal and proposals like it must have consulted scientists before they did, and so they must know what you just said is true, because it demonstrably is true. So why isn't nuclear part of the solution? Why are they against nuclear?
It's very disappointing. Well, I mean, there's sort of three big reasons why people are against nuclear. I mean, the first is that they associate it with the bomb, which is wrong. They're two separate technologies.
Two separate technologies, folks. Keep that in mind. Next time that someone tries to tell you that nuclear is bad because of the bomb, you remind them that that's two separate technologies.
You know, the second is that in the 60s, more in the 60s, but still around today, there was concerns that too much cheap energy, too much nuclear energy, would result in overpopulation, overconsumption. And then the third one, which is...
I'll tell you what, that's probably the real reason why they are against nuclear. He just said that a very small amount of nuclear waste would leak out and radiation would not affect or kill anyone. I know there's a lot of YouTube and internet sensational people out there who claim that Fukushima is killing millions as we speak. But I'm going to go with the experts on this one, and just some of the examples he's laying down here, and he's debunking these negative thoughts on nuclear. I'll let you guys finish up.
In some ways, is the most powerful is just a really strong desire to use energy to harmonize with the natural world. That turns out to be a bad idea, because the more natural resource we use, the worse it is for the natural environment.
Well, exactly. And I would just, unfortunately at the time, I would recommend your piece on Quillette to everybody watching, because it really...
Now, Carson Tucker, or Tucker Carlson, I'm sorry, he really emphasized the part exactly when this gentleman starts talking about natural climate. This could be something that's bad for the natural climate. And what I think Fox News is doing right now is, we all know that 2020 campaign is going to revolve around climate change. And Fox News is building up that climate is natural and that man can't do anything about it. Judah Cohen tweeted out about the snow and how you can predict little this and little that, but, and don't quote me, I'm not reading it word for word, but he said in a sense that you can, the forecast can say this much, but when Mother Nature wants to snow, she's going to snow, and there's nothing you can do about that. And I replied exactly, and there's nothing that man could do about the climate. I mean, he pretty much spelled it out for everybody. If Mother Nature wants it to snow, it's going to do what it wants to do, no matter what man says or does. So anyway, you guys check it out. What's up with that? Covered a piece on it, and I wanted to watch that and just go over it. But the best part about this guy is that he is making a pitch for nuclear energy. And I said this about a month ago on one of my shows, and I had some snide comment about that nuclear is dirty. But again, they're associating it with the bomb. We're talking about the energy aspect of it, which is two separate technologies, two entirely different processes that we're dealing with when it comes to power. And it's cheap power. And that statement that he said that there were concerns of overconsumption and overpopulation because of how cheap the power could actually be. Maybe people won't work as hard because their electric bill is so cheap, so they stay home and do it all the time. I don't know where that came from, but still. This guy didn't have an agenda about warming or cooling. He was just stating the facts. He helped debunk the bad things about nuclear energy. And he also presented facts about wind and solar in the beginning without ad hominem attacking the Democrats or anybody else, but basically just telling us how reliable solar and wind is. And he gave us a number of 10 to 40% of the time it's either sunny or the wind is blowing. And I'm just not sure if you're a common sense type of person out there, that 40% would be needed just for the winter time alone in certain parts of the country. I mean, most of you in the northern plains, the northwest, California mountains, Nevada mountains, the Northeast, the Midwest had some cold days. More of the Northeast this year was a constant cold and a constant snow. I just can't imagine that 40% would be enough to get us through the winter, especially up here in the Northeast and the Northern Plains where it got really cold this year. We're trying to lay out the facts about this alternative energy. If you just had to worry about your own ranch, then yeah, solar would do just fine for your home, I guess. You know, combination of wind and solar just for your property only, sure, I guess. But when it's becoming part of the solution of a power grid, and they're just telling us the truth. Hey, 10 to 40% of the time it's sunny or windy. That's not enough. Not when the demand for power in the winter months, especially if we get what we think we might be getting in 2020, which could be one of the coldest winters we've seen in a long time. That's just speculation at this point. But it's well-deserved speculation, especially if we continue to see our sun remain spotless. And how many days does this go on for? I believe we had a year without spots. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I read something interesting about that not too long ago, and it was quite some time ago. So it's not totally out of the question that we see a long period of time without sunspots. It's very possible. Before solar cycle 25, even. All right, so let's move on to our next. This one right here. Yeah, heads will explode. Mine did. This is awesome. Greenheads will explode over new renewable process, CO2 to coal. Move over wind farms, step aside acres of solar panels. There's new renewable energy source coming down the pike. And it has the potential to put the others out of business. And ironically, it's the climate alarmist biggest demon. It's carbon dioxide. You heard it right, folks. Scientists have been doing research at RMIT University of Melbourne, Australia, have discovered a new method of taking carbon dioxide in its gas form and converting it into solid coal. The discovery has the potential to completely change the way people regard the carbon dioxide that humans release into the atmosphere. The paper detailing how the feat was accomplished was published on February 26th in the Nature Communications. Here's the link right here, folks, on the page. It says, while we can't literally turn back time, turning carbon dioxide back into coal and burying it back in the ground is a bit like rewinding the emissions clock. In other words, the little impact that man has right now on the atmosphere with CO2 emissions is about to get even less with this new technology. Methods of carbon sequestration already exist, but those methods are technically and economically challenging. Major oil companies and energy concerns such as Shell are currently spending a fortune on projects aimed at removing atmospheric CO2 from the air. But those processes involve turning CO2 into liquid form and injecting it back into rock formations. The process is so expensive that even major companies can't afford it without government subsidies. While it is not the first time that scientists have been able to turn CO2 into coal, previous methods required extremely high temperatures and were not viable outside laboratory settings. The new method can be accomplished at room temperature. To date, CO2 has only been converted into a solid at extremely high temperatures, making it industrially inviable. But the researchers have found a way to get around this extreme problem by using liquid metals as a catalyst. We've shown it's possible to turn back to gas into carbon at room temperature in a process that's efficient and scalable. The liquid metal catalyst was developed by the research with specific surface properties, making it extremely efficient at conducting electricity while chemically activating the surface. According to the press release, the carbon dioxide is dissolved into a beaker with an electrolyte liquid and a small amount of liquid metal, which is then changed with an electric current. The CO2 slowly converts into solid flakes of carbon, which are naturally detached from the liquid metal surface, allowing continuous production of carbonaceous solids. And yes, the process has the potential to yield future energy source. The carbon produced may be able to be used as an electrode. Now, I'm going to continue this story here because this is fascinating stuff right here. And again, you know these Democrats, their minds are like everywhere, brain everywhere, all right? They can't believe that scientists actually figured this out, but it's happening. Room temperature, folks, no longer at high temperatures. Room temperature now, they can do this process. A side benefit of the process is that the carbon can hold electrical charge, becoming a supercapacitor, so it can potentially be used as a component in future vehicles. I'll repeat this. A side benefit of the process is that the carbon can hold electrical charge, becoming a supercapacitor, so it could potentially be used as a component in future vehicles. Planes, trains, and automobiles, right? Think about this, guys. This is huge. Huge. Now, let's say we convert 30 to 40% of the emissions that we put into the atmosphere. And again, that's a very small percent in the first place. Let's try like around 5% of the total CO2 put in our atmosphere. 5% is us humans. That's a very, very small amount. So we're talking about 30 to 40% of that is removed. Okay? We're going to see that it's not going to do, if anything at all, to the atmosphere or to the weather. But it will give us clean air and another source of clean energy. It's clean because what we burn from this particular energy can be recaptured and turned back into carbon. This is brilliant. Absolute genius. We are cleaning the atmosphere of the pollution of CO2, the coal, by capturing it and recreating it and burning it. It's taking it out. I've always talked about how I believe in clean air, clean water. And when you talk about do humans impact the air that we breathe and the water we drink? Absolutely, 100%. So when you find technology like this, it's very important to people like me. This is going to help save people's lives, removing carbon emissions from the atmosphere. That number of people that die from smoke a year is 7 million, and that's probably just a lowball estimate, but 7 million. And think about if we can take 40% to maybe even 50% of the CO2 released by man and convert it back into fuel or energy. That's a win-win. And I am so tickled that this article was written, that these scientists exist, and it's almost like a smack in the face to these alarmists out there who are screaming about how bad carbon is for us. Again, you guys can check out the story on our website through What's Up With That. Leaves the link. Little damage control here. CNN explains global warming does not always mean warming. Oh boy. We'll read a little bit of quotes here. Is it climate change or global warming? How Science and a Secret Memo Shaped the Answer, by Jen Christensen from the Clinton News Network. It's complicated, she writes. The term global warming confuses people because it triggers thoughts about warmth. Yeah, that's because that's what Al Gore and others were saying, was going on. And it sort of lends itself to a misinterpretation when it also impacts the cold, said Mike Hume, a professor of human geography at the University of Cambridge, whose work focuses on the way of climate change is discussed in public and political conversations. Okay, you could think global warming as a large macro perspective phenomenon, said Naomi Oreskes, a professor of the history of science and affiliated professor of earth and planetary science at Harvard University, who focuses on climate change. Climate is more complicated the term global warming also doesn't get at how it impacts weather locally and regionally. So to me, you got Fox, who is laying the foundation to educating the public about natural cycles and that the climate is natural, that renewables are not reliable. And then you go to CNN and they are telling you the opposite, the absolute opposite. And now the term global warming used to mean no more snow, no more ice caps. Our children would see snow as a rare thing. That didn't quite happen, did it? No, not at all. In fact, let's take a look at that beautiful snow in the northern hemisphere. Oh my. Still climbing. It's March 3rd. This has broken the charts on how much snow that we've seen in the northern hemisphere. So, but here CNN is doing damage control, and they're trying their damnedest to tell you that, well, global warming means local cooling too, and other extreme events. I mean, you know, which is it, guys? Take your pick. You can't grab all of the categories of climate and stuff it in the same basket and say, well, this is going to happen. I mean, that's like saying at noon the sun will be out in the sky, and at 9:30 p.m. most places it'll be dark. Doesn't work that way. But both sides are flexing their muscles right now, guys, and it's very important that we pay attention, because we've seen this. CNN and other news media outlets who believe in man-made global warming, we know the lies they're capable. Look at what they're doing to our politicians, mainstream media. Now they're going to give it a whirl with climate change. I just find it weird. You know, now we're going to see this. We're going to see this obvious lie from places like CNN. And we'll see who else joins it. Probably MSNBC and CBS News will jump in. ABC News as well. We're going to have to rely on, you know, BBC to actually come through and say, yeah, we're cooling. You know, not likely, but we'll see. I could be wrong. And that was pretty much it for the article part of this. Now let's go into our GFS forecast, our long-term outlook here. I'll go ahead and refresh it. Make sure we have the latest outlook here. Our winter storm. Now, by the way, Mari made a wonderful reminder that this time last year we were dealing with Winter Storm Riley, and we just experienced Winter Storm Scott.
Beast of the East.
And also, yeah, the Beast of the East was also the big topic. But month of March was special last year. We had a blocking situation going on in Greenland, where we saw several nor'easters in the month of March. 4. I think actually there was a fifth one that was weak, but it was nonetheless a nor'easter. So if I'm not mistaken, 4 to 5 nor'easters in the month of March last year. But if you compare that to last year, now we haven't seen that nor'easters, but we have seen 2 more named storms at this point compared to where we were last year. So why am I talking about this? Well, it's because each year I've done this, I've been told that each winter, 17, 18, into 19, and 20 being apparently pretty bad. But so far, out of the 3 years that I've covered this, I've watched winter conditions go back to normal winter conditions or below in the past 2 years alone. I mean, if you live in New York, you're back to normal winters. Western New York, same thing. You know, you guys aren't that affected by the heavy snows or the consistent snows, but you have to admit it's more consistent now. Back to average or slightly below. So, are we going to see warm temperatures this summer? Remains to be seen. I'm still looking into that right now. My mind isn't made up yet. The cold isn't giving up yet either. I thought originally that after this week and early next week we'd start to see 40s and 50s kind of dominate, but there might be another potential for that last hoorah of winter. Let's go ahead and get into it. Much of the country experiencing high pressure, but cold outbreak across most of the country for more than half of the United States, and that deep cold is sticking around for a couple of days. Finally starting to make some progress. Another atmospheric river into California once again by this Wednesday, March 6th. Snow in the Northwest continuing. Their winter has been absolutely the snowiest they've seen in quite some time. And some snow moving across the country from that system of the atmospheric river into the Ohio Valley. You guys are looking at a small snow event, but temperatures begin to rise as it pulls moisture from the Gulf and also warms it up a little bit. Then right before this storm makes an exit, we've got a major low pressure system, and look at the rain forecasted for the South, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. And then above that, where it's cold, you've got snow, heavy snow in the Dakotas, blizzard-like conditions possible for Nebraska. And as this thing gets its act together, my goodness, each side of this storm has got some very, very high possibilities of significant moisture falling, and it moves from the western parts of the South Dakota to the eastern parts of South Dakota into the southeastern part of Minnesota, and then we've got to deal with heavy rainfall across the Mississippi Valley, and we've seen tons of rain already in the south, and that will go almost with the Mississippi. Thankfully, it's on track to where the heaviest of this is going to stay well below the Ohio River, so you'll get light to moderate rain, but not as bad as we're going to see here through parts of Memphis, Tennessee, into southern Kentucky. But look at this storm and how close these isobars are. I mean, it's going to be super windy here in Minnesota, parts of Iowa, and it's not out of the question not to see a blizzard, especially on the 10th of March. I wouldn't say a blizzard, but blizzard-like conditions for 5-6 hours at a time possible here on the 10th Sunday. So we'll keep our eyes on that. That's later this week. That's really our biggest weather maker we got coming in. And this storm just, man, it's huge. But the temperatures warm up in the 40s, and this is where I thought, okay, old man winter might be done. But we get a little bit mild temperature after this storm leaves. It drags cold air back into the northeast, back into the Great Lakes. The northern plains stay cold. The south warms back up to normal. And by Tuesday, we got another low pressure system with lots of moisture once again coming out of the Pacific, the eastern Pacific. And another low pressure system. This one gets its act together a little bit lower than it did last time across the northern plains. Now we're in the southern plains into the Rockies, Nebraska, and it eventually reaches a repeat of March 10th. This storm starts a little bit further southwest, but the pattern is the same. So areas that just received possible 5 to 8 to maybe a foot of snow with blizzard-like conditions. Wednesday you'll have an opportunity, some icing on the front end of that in Michigan. Watch out there. And more rain across the Ohio Valley and again central Tennessee and Kentucky. Areas that don't need the rain. They just got a heavy douse that will be coming by the 10th of March as well on Sunday. Again, this storm is huge, and this is getting stronger towards the end of next week as it's pulling more warmer air from the Gulf, and that's where we start to see this little bit of a warm up here where I thought, okay, this is where I thought that the country was going to start seeing spring conditions. Then I look back in the Northwest and the northern plains and it's like, wow, super cold. It drops all the way into the border of Mexico. And this system is powerful enough that it drags the cold all the way across to the Midwest, down into the deep south once again, Georgia, Louisiana. Another cold blast here. This is Sunday, March 17th, across the east and the south, bringing more chances for snow showers. And then right here on the 19th of March, another system that we're watching for the 20th. We'll see a little bit of ridging of warm temperatures into the northeast, but I have a hunch that this thing will pull in more cold air like the last two systems did, and possibly old man winter could strike the northeast at one more time, one more big hoorah, as this system right here is pulling in a lot of moisture, and it'll be interesting to see how it shapes up. But this is way down the road. This is 16 days away, so not even really worth mentioning, but the indications show, like we've talked about over and over on this program several times, and by the advice and observations of Joe Bastardi, this February into mid-March is going to be a rollicking cold period of time, and we're seeing that fluctuation into mid-March, where it's going to be cold this week into the weekend, and then we see a little bit of a warm-up, but then another punch of cold air mid-March, March 15th. The East and the Midwest gets cold again, and the northern plains remain cold as well. So just when we thought there might be some spring conditions right around the corner, the GFS is hinting that it's not going to be quite out of the woods yet, even though we see some significant warming at a certain point of March. And I'll go ahead and show you guys the temperatures, what they're thinking around this time. And we get into the end of March or mid-March. You see that warmth trying to fight in, but by here, most of the areas we're looking at 40s and 50s, and then that cold air mass trying to make its way down one more time, and we see 50s and 60s right at the approaching front. So it'll be interesting to watch 50s and 60s with a drastic temperature drop of possibly 30 to 40 degrees if this cold air is dragged down like it appears it's going to be. And what we're looking at too is this tilt. And a lot of times when you see this tilt, it usually means that this is going to be raked across at this angle. So this cold air line will definitely push eastward as it makes its way across the United States. So we'll keep a close eye on it. Again, it's several days out. A lot can change, a lot can happen in between now and then, but still very active weather pattern. Arctic ice on the downside just a little bit, but again, numbers compared to 2018 still way above what we were last year, so still obvious ice growth here in 2019, the early part. And this is the part of the year where we see it peak out, and it'll start to decline as we get into our warmer months in the northern hemisphere. Looking at the ice right now, very close to that orange median line, except out there in western Alaska, and we've talked about that. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about where it's warm in the Arctic, but this is an area that's been a little bit warmer than usual, and you can see it here in the ice caps. This part of it definitely has been affected by warmer weather than usual, but then you look back here in Russia and you see the area where we are exceeding ice expectation growth. Look at this. So where I feel like we've gained ice, doesn't fill it up, but it gives a significant chunk back. So again, very, very little negative to look at as far as our ice this year in the Arctic, and this will only continue to get worse, or not worse, but stronger, I should say. Let's take a look one more time at our snow cover here at NOAA. Again, that's a pretty large portion of the northern hemisphere. It's been a while since we've seen that kind of snow cover this deep into March, and it's really since mid-February we've seen an increase in the United States as well. Taking a look at our GFS tool, GFS tools tropical tidbits. I want to show you guys El Nino, and we have seen some warming in this region, and especially in the areas where we're seeing in the 27s. Those were 26s for a while. Those are up. Areas right here were also in the 24s. This middle part right here, we are now starting to see heat up as well. That could be affecting temperatures north of that area as well. We will look at the index right now, and we're sitting at a 1.257. If this is doing what I think it's doing, which is going through that 3-month phase of temperature ranges of 0.8 above baseline to 0.12, this is normal for if we are indeed in this El Nino, like some are saying we are. This is normal values, and now we'll have to watch and see if this continues on over the next 2 to 3 months to see that true El Nino signature, because right now, up until the last 3 months, we haven't seen that classic signature for an El Nino. And some of us are now starting to agree that it's starting to form, and we will just continue to monitor this at this point. And I think that's all I got. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, or not bad news, you probably missed it, but if you have DVR or on demand, go back to Fox News tonight and check out Hannity, our beloved Joe Bastardi. Some consider him a national treasure out there, but he will join Sean Hannity tonight as broadcast. Now that's already over, but I just found that out, so I wanted to share that. If anybody has on demand, make sure we check that video out tonight and see what he has to say on national television. And I bet you he talks a lot about how natural things are right now, and you know, he's probably going to stay away from that whole CO2 thing, but Joe is good at explaining natural cycles and natural weather phenomena. So I'll be interested to tune in as well to see what that interview is all about. All right, Mari, did you have anything to add tonight, or anything you wanted to share?
I just want to say hi to everyone in the chat. It's always a pleasure. With the topics you discussed, definitely lots to debate. There's a lot of differing opinions about nuclear energy and the waste, the pros and cons. You know, I'm on the fence with some things, and I totally understand the benefits of nuclear energy as well. And, you know, if we're in a bind and we need lots of energy quick, that is an answer. You know, that's going to supply a lot of energy to the masses. I get it.
I'm not trying to form an alliance on one particular source. I just wanted to put nuclear out there as a possibility with natural gas and coal as well.
I entirely get both sides, and it's definitely an interesting debate. Some people were a little snarky about me mentioning fracking in Colorado, but you know what?
You have to put it on the table.
There's a lot of variables, and that was one of them. I just read that it was near an injection site. So just eyes open and pay attention, take note, and just watch. You know, who knows?
But still odd to see those three events today at around the same time frame.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So Carlton's in here, and everyone knows we just love him. He's doing some fascinating...
He's a fun guy.
He's really, he has a crazy mushroom growing operation, and he is working with... just to make it short, we're going to interview him.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to break it down. He's doing some brilliant things, and it's all surrounded about what's going on with the climate, what are we looking forward to. I think I read he just has 50,000 acres of hemp that's going to be going in because of that snow line you were showing. So he's working with native tribes in Canada.
Wow.
And he has educated them on the grand solar minimum and the natural cycles, and he is getting these tribes to convert and adapt. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Carlton. So always a pleasure. At Thor, I don't know how you're typing, because he just he said on Friday 350 pounds of copper piping fell on his right hand.
Jesus. Crushed
his ring finger. He has 12 stitches and a nice broken bone. So that sounds incredibly painful.
Jeez.
I don't know how you're typing as quickly.
Speak and spell.
So get better. I'm glad there wasn't more damage. And there's rains in here. And
David,
everyone, hello. It's a pleasure. Stephen said that there's sleet. I think Louisiana, Mississippi border. Expect freezing temps tonight. Someone mentioned the last show that Texas was going to have freezing temps, and he was worried about the blooms on the trees. I have not followed up with that to see how that played out, but that was supposed to be today. I don't know if they dipped down into freezing. Do you?
I can definitely check real quick. And we were talking about the last show about how Florida saw not anything freezing in Texas is forecasted. Actually tonight, yes, we will see freezing temperatures tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting last year. you know, springtime, going into it, watching all the flood damage,
this
wondering
is
how the
incredible.
crops are going to pan out.
The low temperatures here on March 5th, look at this. I mean, we're talking about freeze line all the way down to the south. So this is definitely going to impact any kind of spring growth whatsoever, because it is trying to get warm down there. But we have a lot of rain on the way. We've got a lot of snow. We've got a lot of ice. Winter's not done. Go ahead, Mari.
That's all I have. It's, you know, it's always a pleasure. Everyone, hope you're enjoying the website. Jake showed it off in the beginning. I'm adding new things daily.
Brilliant.
The glossary is time consuming. Every entry is a new page that I have to add. So that's going to take time for me to build up. I'm hoping to do a certain amount of pages a day. So yeah, it's just going to be a good place for reference on all parts. I wouldn't mind having like mushroom cultivating. Carlton says he wants to send us some mushrooms.
Yep.
I know you're not a big mushroom person.
No,
but I love mushrooms.
Me and your daughter have a hate club
yes,
for mushrooms.
There's actually
Sorry,
a
Carlton.
mushroom hating club in my house.
But I still appreciate your work, and I think it's fascinating. I'm not saying it's bad.
But there's also a mushroom lovers club as well.
I'm sure there is, yeah.
You don't care about that.
I
Jake.
don't.
But
I will.
love mushrooms.
I'm sure I will when I'm starving. That's for sure. So we'll just have to see.
I swear you haven't had mushrooms cooked right. If you just allow me to cook them for you. You've been just tainted in the past by bad cooks.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Getting
Jake.
sick to my stomach. All right.
Shut up, Jake.
So anyway, guys, I'm just joking.
Oh, and Carlton thinks your voice is really soothing.
Soothing. Well, I'm glad you appreciate it. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. We are scheduling a show for Wednesday, March 6th. That'll be 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Things are starting to get a little more settled, so we're going to try to be here with a little more consistency. There's a lot to talk about. We still got cold to deal with. We still got a lot of rain coming. Warmer temperatures will be here, folks. I know you're getting sick of this snow. They will be here, I promise. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.